No.
Fans are the most important assets to any team. Without them having any say, you cannot get any of the benefits of them being able to feel that they have some sort of control over the club, which in often, like in a lot of cases, they've dedicated their whole life to, and which they carry down throughout their generations, treating somewhat like a religion. Our burden in this debate is to prove that the veto power held by season ticket holders has direct benefits for these fans and therefore for the clubs which they support and being so important to them. 3 things I'm going to do in this speech. Firstly, a brief characterization, then why it's bad for corporations to have absolute control over sports clubs as they do in the status quo, then the benefits of fans having the control, which they do on our side of the house. First though, on our model. We tell you that when major transactions are being deliberated, seasonal ticket holders will come together to vote. Ticket holders will then vote as a simple yes or no as to whether they agree with like the course of action, which is being like the major course of action, which is being like deliberated by their team. The stance of the ticket holders as a whole will be determined by the majority vote, and of course, if this is at odds like with the proposed action, then it will be vetoed. In terms of our characterization and what season ticket holders are actually like, we tell you that they clearly care deeply about the club which they support. They've literally forked out money simply to watch their team for the duration of a year. This interest means that the ticket holders will be well informed of their team and its happenings. You want to know about that team which forked out money to go and watch. They aren't part of the club in the same way as vested corporate members are. So they still have that perception as a fan would of just having that support, wanting their team to do well, irrespective of profit incentives. And they've done their research because they've literally gone out there and purchased this ticket. Although we tell you at the same time that season tickets are affordable to all fans if they care enough about it. This looks like a Blues fan pass costing $200. If you really care about that team, it's accessible to anyone. You could forego some other costs to be able to afford that $200. So we tell you that if a fan cares enough about it, they will own a season ticket. What we get on our side of the house are those fans who have got serious interest, who are willing to pay, are those who are going to be making calling the shots. We tell you about instances where veto will be used. We tell you if ticket holders are voting against an action of the club, this shows disagreement of the fans toward that course of action which is being suggested. And this also infers that those fans feel as though they themselves are going to be disadvantaged by the course of action which is being proposed. So that's the premise for these veto actions which we support on our side of the house. So first then, on why it's bad for corporations to have absolute control over sports clubs. So this being the problem with the status quo, which NEG has to support on their side of the house. 4 mechanisms as to why corporations are bad in terms of having absolute control over their sports clubs. Firstly, and most importantly, we tell you that corporations prioritize immediate profit. This looks like selling off a star player in order to generate a profit. What's really important is that clubs will switch hands every few years or even within less periods of time. During the owners during that period of time only care about the financial the profit which they get during the course of their ownership. Therefore, they prioritize the profit which they make during the course of their ownership during that small during the small amount of times which they own it. In the case of selling away a star player, that star player may also be the reason why there are particular supporters who care so deeply about that club. That's just a first example and instance of where these 2 things may be at odds. Secondly, we tell you that the corporations don't have any interest in the supporter base and the community. This looks like a Russian oligarch owning Chelsea for a good few years. We tell you, number one, that they don't have any interest because they don't have any interest in the communal benefits which a lot of these clubs provide for those people around them. But also even if they wanted to understand how much these teams mean to people immediately around them, they they can't generate that understanding in cases like of a Russian oligarch literally living like on the other side of the world. They're not like, they wouldn't understand it even if they wanted to. Thirdly, is the way in which corporations literally treat teams in investment. Like they like in terms of like just having that profit incentive, we tell you that they would like that owners could like sell off to new owners at like short notice, even if they know like the club won't be handled well. So like this looks like clubs changing hands. Like the previous owners like don't really care about who's buying it, so long as they're the ones who are getting the profit out of it. Fourthly, is we tell you that like managers and other staff responsible for like managing the team, if they don't meet these short-term like goals, like these profit goals of the corporations and the status quo, then they're just going to be swapped out until someone like does meet like those goals of the club in terms of like the image that this club wants to like the image that these owners want to portray to maximize their own profit. We say that's bad for players when people are just being swapped out just because they don't meet like these corporate interests. The impacts of this is that like the short-term gain is prioritized over the long-term like team performance. This results in like less support and therefore less income for the teams in the long term. We tell you that there is like actually like direct alignment between like the support from fans, which we get on our side, and like generating money, which we still think is in the best interest of corporations, but we can guarantee like to a much higher extent that fans are going to be happy and will support their club more if they at least get a say and stop like really bad things happening in terms of like how they're affected by big decisions. Between these 2 points, I will take a POI if you have one.
Do you not suppose that corporations can still buy these tickets so that they still have a say and therefore that point is completely redundant?
We still think that there's going to be fans coming to watch a game. I'm not sure if you're going to run a point on like corporations buying up every single seat in their stadium. I don't think that's realistic. I think both sides of the house still have fans in the stadium. We get them having a say. Secondly, then, on the benefits of fans being in control. So we tell you that fans are the ones who like keep teams afloat. They're literally the ones who like buy their merch, like buy jerseys, which is like what brings in those like that income for like the owners of the company. 4 mechanisms as to why it's better to have fans in control. Firstly, is that we can ensure that the club is actually based in areas where there is a passion for them. Like this is areas where the club is still supported. Fans know that better because they're literally like the fans, like the ticket holders are the ones who will have that interest. And so therefore you get like those financial benefits. That's what's key about this mechanism. You get those financial benefits of people still supporting, walking into like supporter stores and buying jersey and that sort of thing. We also tell you that fans have literally got like a vested interest in their club. They want them to do well in the long term. They want to support them in the long term. They're going to factor that into their decision making, like when they're choosing to or not to veto certain decisions. Thirdly, is that it prevents a loss of identity for fans. We say that communities tend to literally be like based around like their sports teams and clubs. This like looks like your towns in England, which every Friday night will be having like big celebrations if their team has won. When fans can dictate this, like you prevent this super big harm, which happens when like a big corporations can literally just like move out if it's more appealing to them financially. Fourthly, is that it prevents fans becoming resentful toward their club. This is something really exclusive on our side because we're at least giving fans a say. This means we prevent like the decisions being made which are like literally directly at odds, which harm them, and therefore like we prevent this loss of support which happens when clubs' decisions are at odds with their fans. Impacts of this is that fans are satisfied they're being taken into account. They're the highest stakeholders in the club. Now they get a say. Now the club has a continued supporter base, brings in all those profit financial incentives, which NEG might try to support. That's why we're so proud to affirm.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that speech. I now invite up the first negating speaker to start their team's case.
I'll just take POIs in the chat. We should not be giving only a small group of fans all the power and all the say to veto decisions that these sports clubs are trying to make. In my speech today, I'll be telling you about how this is going to give the season ticket holders way too much power over the decisions that the team is making, and the harms that will bring to the teams themselves and also to other teams, which I'll be getting to later. But I'd like to just first start in with some rebuttal. The other team put a lot of emphasis on how they were going to be giving fans more power, but we don't see this as being true because we said that they are instead prioritizing only a small group of fans, the season ticket holders, so they're actually giving like the majority of fans less influence than these other ones. And we also see that that has harms from the rest of the fans who have not been able to get these season ticket holders season tickets, feeling very like upset and like removed from the club and not wanting to like be a fan anymore because they can't have that say. They also spoke a lot about how they were going to get rid of the control that corporations have. We said that under both sides, clubs still need sponsors. They still need sponsors. They still need like people funding them, people owning them. So we can't really get rid of this on either side of the house. They also didn't explain to us what would stop corporations buying up like all the season ticket passes, because they're not buying up all the seats in the stadium. They just need to buy all the season ticket passes, or even like a majority of them, and then they're going to have so much say and influence. So to get into characterization, the people who are buying these season ticket holders are going to be wealthy people, right? Because as soon as the season ticket pass comes with a vote on what the club is doing, that price is going to like massively skyrocket because it's going to be such a valuable thing. So it's going to be majority like wealthy sports fans who are able to do this. And we see that these wealthier sports fans are usually like more conservative, and they're motivated too because they have the influence too, and they're a sports fan, to like buy a lot of tickets either for themselves or for their friends or family to like have a lot of influence and have a lot of votes. So we don't see it being like your average sports fan who has most of the say in these season ticket passes. It's majority like wealthy people who can just buy up all the tickets, and corporations. So what does this mean? We see that when like a club is trying to hire maybe like a younger player or a player of a different ethnicity, because all of the season ticket holders are, you know, like these wealthy, more conservative people, they probably don't support this. So we actually see like that, we see them probably vetoing it. And that's really harmful to the careers of these players, because now it's not like genuinely people who are like spotting their talent trying to hire them. It is like the fans just vetoing them being hired because they don't like them for whatever reason, like whether it's their age, like their ethnicity or something like that, which is like stopping their careers and stopping the growth of the team and like decreasing the value of sports that's played. We also see that these people have like quite a connection to the set team and the set like manager and coach that's there. So if the team wasn't, or the club was needing to like get rid of a manager because something that had happened behind the scenes, the season ticket players are not likely to know like the full story of this. And even if they do, they're likely to want to keep the same team and the same manager that's like been there, because that's a team that they've been supporting for a really long time. So they just want to like resist this change, which means that we don't see the teams being able to move forward. And we also again see like the a lot of other fans who aren't able to make this decision being really upset about this, potentially like being at odds with the group that's actually got the season ticket passes, because they're not the same as like the actual the rest of the fans of the sport, because these are like wealthier people who have different views to them. Now to move into my second point, we see that people who are really wealthy, who have like a really vested interest in a specific team, are able to buy up a lot of season ticket passes of other teams, and veto decisions that they're making in order to like decrease the success of that team. So we see they might do this for two reasons. The first reason is because they have one team that they're really supporting, and so they're wanting to like drag down other teams so that their team is successful. We also see they might do it because they want to like be successful in like betting on their team, so they want to make the other teams really weak, so that like betting on their team they can make a lot of money from that. So the effects of this are smaller teams that don't have like these wealthy people supporting them, and so other people have like bought up their season ticket passes, they're not going to be able to like hire good players, because as soon as they try to hire a good player, their season ticket holders are going to veto it. Like as soon as they try to get a good manager or a good coach, that's going to be vetoed. And we see that this is incredibly harmful to the success of this team. Teams often need to like keep securing wins, being successful to like to get sponsorship deals and funding. So if they're not able to do this, it's going to be really, really hard for them to succeed as a team, as well as the fact that they're not getting like good managers and good players and good coaches. So the effects of this, and now we see like less genuine competition in sports, because we don't see like a lot of teams having an equal chance. We see like some teams really, really supported and doing great, and other teams doing a lot, not being able to do as well. So now like sporting tournaments have a lot less value because the teams are on as equal of a playing field. There's much more disparity than there would be without this. And my second speaker will also bring in how this is going to like play out in developing countries and how like that disparity is even increased. And to move into my final point, we see that people are also able to veto like what stadium games are played at. And so the areas where you have like the most of their season ticket holders condensed, like often these are going to be like more urban areas, because it's like where you're going to have more people and like more wealthier people. That's going to be where all the games are played, because as soon as you try to like have a game in a stadium in a smaller city, people aren't going to want that. They're going to want the game to be like where they are so they can see it. And we think that this is really harmful for us to like just the business in these smaller towns, because you get like a lot of you make a lot of money when a sports team comes to like play in your area. It's really good for the town. And so we don't see smaller towns getting these benefits anymore. And we also think that it makes it really more difficult for people in these smaller towns to access visiting these games, because now they have to pay so much more to travel and get there, which means that they're able to just like enjoy less sport, which, you know, it really sucks for them. And also like they're not going to be as inspired and like as connected to the game, because, you know, when you can actually like be sitting in the stadium and be seeing your team play, that is a lot more like compelling to you, like being in the stadium, than when you're just watching it on TV, feeling like really upset and, you know, like disenfranchised because your team is only catering to like this small group of its rich fans now, and they don't really care about you because you weren't wealthy enough to purchase a season ticket pass or you missed out. So under our side of the house, so the other team sees sports fans being disenfranchised, and we see less sports competition, which is really harmful. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that speech. I now invite up the second affirming speaker to continue their team's case.
Unmuted.
Sorry.
3, 2, 1. NEG has hinged their case on owners partaking in literal fraud and all of the other teams somehow being able to overwhelm the majority middle class ticket holders of every single other team, spending billions on ticket passes every single year. It's simply insane to assume that would happen, and I completely do not agree with this case at all. First, I'm going to look at some of the rebuttal that they provided, and then I'm going to look at why we're actually not able to partake in this voter fraud that they suppose is going to happen. So first off, they said that we won't be giving fans any more power because these people are not a true representative of the team. First off, we would say they are directly a part of the community, which is largely made up of middle-class individuals who have the time to attend every game, which wealthy elites simply do not. We would say the majority of these team support is coming from these people in these communities who are affected by every other part of the fan base as well. So they care about every aspect of the club. They care about their fellow fans. And additionally, you don't get any say for fans on your side. It's really unclear why you would be opposed to having some fans having a say on ours when you literally have a millionaire in control of the team on yours. We would also say the major supporters are still going to engage with all of the team politics, so it's really unclear as to why they get any less say on our side of the house. So let's look at sponsors, because they said we weren't going to get any. That was not part of our case. I'm just going to largely ignore this because we'd obviously still get sponsors. Just because, you know, the team finally has a say doesn't mean that people aren't going to buy teams or that they're going to sell them off to someone else. So let's look at why corporations can't spend all of their money on season tickets. They're literally not going to be making any money. They're spending billions every year renewing their annual passes to watch the team. I think it's simply insane to assume that they're going to do that. They're not going to be able to overwhelm the millions of supporters that are for this team, or at least the thousands of supporters that are for this team. And even if they do, they're not making any profit. It's also literally illegal. They are defrauding their investors, so they cannot do this. I think it's pretty clear this is simply not a possibility. It's insane to assume that this is going to happen. So that's why Nick's points still stand, and we still have fans having more investment, having more of a say, and being able to partake in their community even more. They're not going to be resentful towards their team. They're going to be more passionate. They're going to be able to make an actual difference to their community. Additionally, the team is going to probably be doing better because the majority shareholders, which only care about short-term profits, which, by the way, has been completely unresponded to, are not selling off their best players to make a quick buck. We would also say that they're not having a constant change of management, which obviously uproots the team every single time this happens. So now I'm going to respond to some of what First has said. So they firstly said that the season ticket, they having a say will increase the price massively. We would first off say that the majority of people already own this ticket and that they can't change the price out of nowhere. There's no actual increase in the amount that's being provided to these people. So I think there would be a lot of outrage if they suddenly hiked all of the prices. We would also say there's actually not much limit on how many season tickets can be sold. And we would say that companies would probably want them to buy as many as possible, and they would want to make them accessible. There's no legitimate scenario in which they completely rule out buying these tickets for every single middle class fan that would otherwise be supporting them, because let's be real, that is the majority of their fan base. They're losing all of them and all of their season ticket support. They're losing massive profit margins. So we would also say that they can't buy more than their share. I think it's really unrealistic to assume that somehow one individual is able to buy out 20 tickets just by proposing that it's for their family members. We don't think this is a realistic thing based in reality. We would also say it's still only going to be fans investing regardless, right? Because other teams aren't going to bankroll the other teams so that they can buy more, so they can expand their stadium, so they can have better training. By bankrolling another team, you are actively supporting them. So we would say other fans wouldn't do that, and they also wouldn't have the money to do that. We would also say, in response to the more conservative point, these people aren't necessarily going to be more wealthy. We would actually say the millionaire people who currently own these teams and who would continue to have control over those teams on your side of the house would be far more conservative than them too. We already have them, and also the middle class individuals would literally outnumber them. Crazy rich people largely don't care about sports. They care about money. They don't have the time or the money, and the majority of season ticket. They don't have the time and the money to be wasting on buying a bunch of season tickets just because they support them. The majority of season ticket holders are middle class individuals who are part of the community and passionate about that sport. I will take a POI before I continue.
Do you not recognise that at the point where our corporations can no longer make business decisions, they will no longer want to invest?
Well, first off, I think they still can make business decisions. I think it's completely wrong to assume that there's going to be no changes in the community at all. And we would say that the fans probably are going to push them towards a better investment because in the long term, they're going to be better off. So we would say that they still are going to invest in these teams. And also, additionally, like you're having all of that team support now and you're having them have even more of a say. As you said, they're probably going to buy more season ticket passes. So they're making even more money for that team. So we would say it actually makes it a better investment in the future. Additionally, like they're not buying these teams because they have entire control over it. They would still have like control over the intricacies. They would still have control over some certain parts of it. But I think it's pretty unrealistic to assume that they're suddenly going to sell these off. By the way, if they're selling these off, they have to sell them to someone, so people will be investing regardless. I don't think they're just going to drop these teams and give up on their entire investment. So now I'm going to move on. So they're going to resist change is what you said. First off, we would say supporters are largely young. They support changes. They are like quite progressive. They're usually dedicated to the team too. So they want to see positive changes helping their team and pushing them forward. We would also say, when you said that they're at odds with the rest of the fans, this is simply untrue. They are part of the fan base as much as you try to deny this. They're not buying a season ticket pass because they think that it's like going to help their team, because they're not supporters. I think that's completely unrealistic. We would also say that they would be far less at odds with the literal billionaires who are owning these teams in the first place. So now I'm going to move on to your second point and provide some rebuttal. So you said that they would buy up all the season ticket passes. But something like the other teams would buy up all the season ticket passes. But something not going to provide the team with billions of tickets to outnumber the large fan base that they already have. They're not going to give them a massive amount of money. And even if they want to, they can't, right? They're not going to be able to outnumber them with the amount of people who would be investing in these tickets at the hopes of like changing what the team is able to do. We would also say that sportsmanship does happen, and it seems really unrealistic that every single individual on a team is going to band together to take away any chance of another team succeeding. They like favor rivalry and they want like to have success and they want the team who's winning to be the best. We would also say that season ticket holders are simply not going to be spending hundreds every single year, particularly if it's for every team that they oppose. Like it's simply not possible, right? Like legitimately, how do they do this? It seems really, really unclear, particularly if like they're not able to even be the majority in the first place. Okay, they also said like where stadiums will be. So first off, we believe that they're going to be where communities are already established. They're going to buy like season tickets if they're already there. So all of the people who already own season tickets and where the communities are based currently are not going to be like supporting it moving elsewhere. We also say that would have moved anyway. You have literally zero control over them moving on your side of the house. If the majority of the fan base is in the urban community, it's a good thing that they move towards them. They will move where the community is most prominent, which is something that we support. This is why we are proud to affirm.
Great. Thank you for that speech. I now invite up the second negating speaker to continue their team's case.
Make sure you recharacterize why it's rich people buying tickets.
The affirming team has come up and tried to tell you, the affirming team has come up and tried to tell you why it will not be rich people who are buying these tickets. But realistically, we think this is completely false and that it will in fact be predominantly rich people buying these tickets. In this speech, I'm going to introduce, rebuttal to the affirmative team's path to victory, then talk about how this debate plays out in developing countries that the affirming team has, seemingly ignored, and then move on to talk about, our path to victory and how we think, we have met our burden. So, beginning with who is going to be buying these tickets. So, a couple things. So, in our first, we established that we think it's going to be rich people because they have lots of money and they've got more money than, the average fan. And then they've replied to this in their second speaker by talking about how ticket price won't go up because, primarily because there is no limit on the number of season tickets someone can buy. So, that can be bought by people. But, this simply isn't true. People are unable to just continuously sell more and more season tickets because there is limited space in a stadium. You cannot house infinite people in a stadium. And as such, because there's a limit on the number of season tickets that can be sold, that means we see an increase in the value of a season ticket because, now you get to vote on something with your season ticket as well as just go to the game. And because of this, just by that alone, the price goes up. But also, people, more people want season tickets now because it means more. And so, there's both an increase in value and an increase in demand. I see the affirming team has produced no reason why the price of these season tickets will not be going up. And so now if we just go back and examine the affirmative team's path to victory, what have they said is, their burden. And they've said, it's that it provides benefits, it provides power to fans. And so what they've kind of talked about here is about how we'll be shifting power away from, rich people and rich corporations to fans. But as we've shown you, it's going to be rich people owning these tickets. And as such, we won't see power shifting to the average fan and it will still be rich people. But also we still see rich people owning these clubs. We still see rich corporations sponsoring these clubs. And when these fans only have the ability to veto decisions, they don't get to make decisions. They only get to decide what decide on what these, rich corporations or these rich people, propose for them to vote on. And as such, they don't really have enough real power. And so when we see, rich people owning the tickets, owning the clubs and sponsoring the club, realistically, where is the power coming to the fans here? And, but they also talked about how clubs make bad decisions for fans under, the status quo. But we simply see this as not being true because the fans are like the clubs, a major stakeholder for the clubs. As they've said, clubs make money through fans buying tickets, through fans, buying merchandising. And as such, a major part of their income is these fans. And so they're unlikely to completely screw them over, even if they're not always acting entirely in their best interests. But even if so, we don't really see that changing under either side of the house. Or, we see it being worse under, their side of the house because, rich people have even more power. And so now, how does this, play out in developing countries? Realistically, in developing countries, we see greater wealth disparity. The rich are, richer in comparison to the poor or the middle class. And this is because, we see very little class mobility, very little benefits for, people of like a lower socioeconomic class. And so what this means is that, it's even less likely that we see power for the middle, for middle class fans, and even more likely that all of this power goes to, rich fans, upper class fans. And as such, we see the same issues, except only exacerbated in these developing countries. Moving on to, the negating path to victory. We've set out for you that our goal is to protect the integrity of sport. So how are we doing this currently? We're preventing rich people from having too much power because, as we've established under the negating side, they're going to have, massive amounts of power through owning all of these tickets. And so what are the impacts of this? We see damages to equality, like rich fans have much more power than poorer fans. And because of this, that damages the integrity of the sport and damages like the integrity of the fans, who are, discriminated against based on their wealth, which is something that many people, come to sport to avoid. And then also it damages the integrity of good sport because we see rich people having, vested interests in which teams, do well. I'll take that away.
Do you think they're going to give up on their entire middle class audience, which provides them with merch money, so that they can hike season ticket prices?
Because I think actually we will see this, and even if they don't, even if we imagine, I think we will see this because it is more money to be made through these they can make massive amounts of money through hiking up these ticket prices. But even if we imagine they don't, when you have like rich people with more resources than the average middle class person, more free time than the average middle class person, because they don't have to work as long, because they have all this passive income and all of this, they realistically are more likely to beat a middle class person to a season ticket. And it becomes even worse when we see them buying 10, 20, 30, hundreds of tickets at a time for like massive groups of people. And so we don't really see how a middle class person is going to beat out these richer people with massive bargaining power. And so moving on to continuing on how rich people having too much power damages good sport. So one interesting idea here is that when rich people are able to directly damage or harm a team's kind of play by doing things such as preventing them from removing poor coaches or managers. What we see is an idea where rich people are able to pick a team and make horrible decisions and veto any good decision they might try to make, and then bet against them in order to make money through off betting through these games. And this provides a way to counteract the idea that they've said that a firm came said sportsmanship prevents like sandbagging other teams and ruining other teams. But actually, when we see there's a large money incentive, because large amounts of money are bet on these games, then actually we think this overrides this moral obligation, and we see rich people ruining the livelihoods of teams and players to make money. And quickly, I'd like to talk about how the fact that even if we accept all of affirmative teams' points and say, actually, it's the middle class fan who is owning these tickets, we think they are bad actors and will make poor decisions for the teams because they are nostalgic. They are, they believe in the old team and are unwilling to negotiate for change and are unwilling to compromise. Because they idolize the current team, and so they're unwilling to change. And this is why we are proud to negate.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that speech. I now invite up the third affirming speaker to close out their team's substantive.
Can you guys hear me? Sweet. Nick gave you, timer. I always forget. What is this? 8 minutes. So strange. Nick gave you 4 minutes of analysis on why corporations are bad. The bench opposition has said no responses to this. They lose on this alone. I'm going to quickly give you 3 reasons why corporations are bad, and it's better to have rich people rather than big corporations and oligarchs. 3 reasons. Firstly, they have no connection. They do stuff that doesn't benefit community. Secondly, they only care about short-term gain. And thirdly, they don't care about the community. They don't care about what people's connection to the club. They don't really care about any of that stuff. All they care about is money. So harmful. We stand for at least some population and some community owning and having decisions on this club. Cool. So for opposition to win today's debate, they have to prove 2 things. Firstly, that corporations are better than fans and they work in the best interest. And secondly, that fans who own this ticket won't truly represent fans or will do the wrong decisions to this team. Cool. 2 main points of clash in today's debate, and then some extraneous rebuttal. Firstly, who will own these tickets? And secondly, whether they act in the best interest of their team. Cool. I'm going to start on who will own these tickets because opposition has tried to claim this and said that it's really, really harmful. Cool. So what have we heard from opposition in today's debate? We firstly heard that only a small group of fans are getting a say. They will be the rich people who can own these tickets, right? They'll have all the say. That's really, really harmful. four main responses here. First is that these tickets are just really, really cheap and accessible, right? My dad bought a ticket at the start of this year, $200 for the Blues. Yes, there's 40,000 tickets. Nobody's going to buy 40,000 tickets. They're really cheap. And even if like they do get sold out, that's still really better than having like one oligarch, right? So like these tickets were really, really cheap. There's lots of tickets available. People can readily get them, right? There's a whole bunch of deals for these tickets. That means if you're a really good fan, you're going to look out for these deals. You're going to do anything you can to get these tickets. So they're going to have like the really dedicated fans getting these tickets anyway. That's really helpful under our side, because my second response here is like, even if there is a small amount of rich people buying these tickets, it's still so much better than having one oligarch who lives in Russia, who doesn't have any connection to the community. This is because the people, even the rich people, care about that community. They care about their team's success. They care about keeping the team in their location. The oligarch doesn't care. It's like an investment. It's like sharesies. They're like, cool, I'll just chuck money over here. I don't care how it goes. I get money back. That's cool. I'll sell it if not. I don't care about sending the team to Las Vegas. I don't really have a connection. Whereas these people, even if they are rich, which we've told you they're not because they're really cheap and accessible, have interest in the community. That is really good, because these teams are supposed to represent the community, are supposed to have like really good things for the community. They have links to the community. It's really good. It's really harmful when they leave, because a whole bunch of these people will feel really bad. Stop supporting the team. The team is even worse off because they've got no supporters, because they left everyone in the dark. That is so harmful. The opposition has had to stand for. They've neglected this. We've won on this alone, because it's better to have a few people who live in the community versus one Russian oligarch who has no connections. So harmful in today's debate. Thirdly, it's just like the representation, right? There's a whole bunch of tickets. People are going to get it. If you're a really dedicated fan, you're going to buy tickets. Like, there's more representation on our side. It's a more democratic process. These people, like rich people, still have the best interests of their community. Fourth, like just the fact, like as Jiminy said, they literally can't hike the price. If they hike the price, there's going to be so much outrage, all those sorts of things. Like, no matter if it's sold out, there's still going to be $200. We see that in the world right now. Even if all the season tickets are gone, they're all for $200. There's no, if they hike the price, that's illegal. They can't do that under status quo. Cool. We've also heard from opposition that they're like going to veto games, veto where games are going to be played. They're only going to be played in urban places. This is really bad because a whole bunch of poor people can't get there. Two responses here. First is just like a reality check. You can't veto where a game's going to be played. The whole reason of sports is you go to different places, you go to different cities. That happens on both sides of the house. Poor people are worse off on both sides. Under our sides, at least they feel like they have a success, feel like they have a say, even if they don't have a ticket. They're like, I know Uncle Bob down the road has a ticket. I feel like he's a better representation. There's somebody I've never met, somebody I don't know. They still have the community at heart. My second response here is that it's just probably better to play in urban areas, right? Because they've tried to claim that it's really harmful that they play in urban areas like big city centres. It's probably really good because there's buses, it's walkable, it's like good infrastructure, good stadiums. It's better than having like a whole team in the middle of nowhere in like Arizona, for example. Nobody lives in Arizona, nobody wants to travel to Arizona. When we have them in Auckland, it's better than having them in Kitty. Just because it's Kitty, it's better to have Auckland buses, trains, more accessible for these poor people. Like buses are really cheap right now. They can hop on a bus for a really cheap price. That's really cool in today's debate. So at the end of this point, we've proven you that the people who be buying them are a whole bunch of diverse people. They're really cheap tickets. And even if they do get expensive, these rich people are still better representation than one oligarch who has no connection to the community, doesn't work in the best interest of these people. So at the end of this point, we've proven that whole bunch of that stuff. I'll take a POI before I move on to the next point of clash.
How can you say that fans have the best interests at heart when there were issues with Chelsea where young people of colour were completely like slandered by fans when they missed a goal?
Excuse me, I'm a Chelsea supporter. That never really happened in reality. I don't think you can claim that. I would have known about that. I don't know about that. In reality, they have a really good connection with the team. They care if they lose. They care if they win. There's like celebrations every Friday night. If they lose, they feel really bad. They're going to veto decisions to get better coaches. That's what happens. We get more social change because the people who own these tickets are probably young, really progressive. They want acceptance. They want different, like a variety of players. We get that on the right side of the house. You have a white oligarch who doesn't really care, doesn't know about these different players. That's really harmful. They make all the decisions. Cool. Now for the second one of clash on whether they act in the best interest of the team. This goes nicely for my PO. I thank you for that. Cool. So we've heard from opposition that people have like a connection to managers. They're not likely to make radical changes. They don't really care about that. My first response is that just supporters really care about success. You see that because people like jump and have like really good parties when the American team won. If they lose, you don't have parties. You have people feeling really bad. They're like, damn, we lost. That means these people are going to be like, well, how can we change? We'll get a better coach. When we get a better coach, we feel better. We can have more parties. That's really good. That means people want to like be in the best interest of the team. They want to feel really good. They want their team to do really well. They want to be well represented on the world stage. They want to be like in the Premier League. You don't have that on the opposition side. These people are like throwing it like sharesies, as I said before. Secondly, it's just that supporters are often younger. 50-year-old men don't really care about football. They're probably out there being a corporate lawyer, like who don't really care about sports. So that means young supporters have lots of time watching these football games. This means they're going to get the deals. They're going to get in early. These white men won't know about it, right? These people want change. They want progressive change. They want people to do well. They want their team to do well. They want to be well represented and want to look really good on the world stage. We also heard this absurd claim from opposition that corporates will just buy all the tickets. That this means the ticket prices will increase. 4 or 5 responses here. First is just like an economic fact. Why would a corporate buy all their tickets, get no profit, spend all of their money? That means they get no profit, right? Why would you buy all your tickets and then no one comes to your game? It's a lose-lose on their side of the house. Secondly, there's just going to be massive outrage if there's no tickets available, right? There's 40,000 seats in a stadium. No one's going to sell 40,000 seats just because you get like a quick save, right? Nobody really cares about that. This looks like fans not supporting the team because they can't get into the stadium because they can't do any of that stuff. They lose interest. They stop supporting the team. No one watches them. The team's worse off. The team is incentivized to look after these people. This is the community. These are people who support them unconditionally. My third response here is just like, even if the price increases, you still get more say. It's better to have a few representation than none at all. My fourth response here is like, if you really care about the club, you're going to try find tickets. You're going to like really be passionate about it. You're going to like go to the deals, get the tickets early, find how to get them, find how to get like secret ways in. My fifth response is just like, as Nick said, even if you don't get a ticket, this is what's been unresponded by opposition. Even if you don't get a ticket, you still feel really good because you're getting representation. You know people. It'll be like Auntie Cindy down the road who's got a ticket. You feel like Auntie Cindy better represents you than somebody who's never been in your community, can literally just send your football team to another country, another state. You believe Auntie Cindy, and if Auntie Cindy believes that's in the best interest, you'll trust her, you emphasize with her. That's really key on today's debate. Now for the last point of clash about rich people buying other teams' tickets to drag other teams down. This was a really absurd claim, like they're going to buy other tickets. 3 responses here. First is just it's not true. Nobody will spend over like 200 grand buying all the other tickets. Their best interest is buying the tickets of their team. They probably don't really care enough about that. They care about their team's success. They want to do it fairly. Most people like a fair football game. No one likes in the rest being like swayed. My second response here is just with like corporations would restrict this. They'd get a whole bunch of like, if they saw another team like spending all their money, they'd just get a whole bunch of their fans to buy tickets to counter that. That's like pretty good. That's an incentive on the corporation. Third response here, it's just that happens on both sides of the house, right? One person can because it's first like one oligarch can just sell that to a corporation, doesn't really care about that team. So at the end of this point, we've shown you that these people who own these tickets will work in the best interest because it's part of their community. They want to see success. They don't want failure. When they see failure, they're going to get a whole bunch of people to help them. They're going to get coaches who actually support them. So proud to stand for a fair game and actually getting people to say and a democratic process in our sports. So proud to negate.
Thank you very much for that speech. I now invite up the final substantive speaker of the debate, third negating.
I would like my POIs in the chat if that's possible. Otherwise, I will try and look out for signals. What are the burdens we had to prove today as the negating side? So firstly, we had to prove that the integrity of sport is infiltrated by this money and power. What did the affirmative side have to prove? They had to prove that these ticket holders would be better decision makers than any management or team company. Adjudicator, when side affirmative failed to prove that their model improves the integrity of sport, improves the management of the team, they lost this debate. Look, a person does not have to attend to any game if they buy the ticket. We just think that this is inherently not true. They also talked about fraud a little bit to try and like completely counter our point. But look, a company is huge. Say Coca-Cola is a main investor or things like that, or a Russian company that they want to talk about. What's to stop like a minimum wage worker in this company fan buying a ticket, one of these? It can be a very sneaky thing that would be very hard to follow. Even if at the point where this is fraud, we think if this is a Russian like thing that they want to like say it is, we just don't think that this is going to be huge and going to be caught on to. Look, before I move on to my points of clash, I just want to say that we clearly won this burden, that when we proved under this model, we get less integrity in sport. Even at the point we affirmative can prove that we're not perfect, right? Even when they can prove that our model we proposed is not great, when we prove that their model is worse, that this moat is worse, we win this debate on this merit. Look, 2 points of clash today. What is the rate, actually 3 points of clash, sorry. What is the role of fans in terms of sports teams? Secondly, what effects do corporations have on sports teams? And thirdly, corporations versus rich people in terms of making decisions. So firstly, just moving on to that first point of clash, what is the role of fans in terms of sports teams? So For side affirmative to win this point of clash, they are completely reliant on the fact that only true fans buy these tickets. Look, three reasons this is not true. Expensive. We talked about how tickets are they are fairly expensive for the average person in the thing, like $200 when they're talking about this general fan who goes out and buy these tickets. We still think this is fairly expensive. Secondly, the motivation of corporations. We think that we've talked about how corporations can come in and buy these tickets. And also thirdly, the motivation of fans, rich fans, to increase on things like betting, etc. So when we look about, the characterizations of these sports fans, yes, we agree. In general, this is someone who works a regular job, goes to pub on Friday wearing their jersey. They talked about when fans are not in control, they're not going to want to buy these jerseys. But we just think this is completely irrelevant in this debate because they do under the status quo when they're not in control. Look, they said we look at maybe even at the point where there's a few diehard fans, at the point where they have money to increase this power. We think that this is largely huge in this debate, right? Because at the point where they're talking about, well, diehard fans are going to want to get in and get these deals. We think that at the point where there's resale of these tickets, we see, at the point where rich people can pay people to buy these tickets for them to get these deals. They have connections where they can get these tickets and buy them, even if they're not buying them at the point where they're overbuying them, they're still buying them for their friends and family who have the same ideals as them, who have the same push as them. So we think that this is incredibly harmful in today's debate. So look, adjudicator, even at the point where these are the true fans buying these tickets, we still won the split on the point that corporations won't want to invest. And secondly, there are too many fans for season pass tickets, just as a small thing. So on the point that corporations aren't going to want to invest, corporations have these control. They have primary control. And we still look, they have characterized them as corporations having very little control under their side of the house. We think this is actually extremely damaging in today's debate because corporations, they have things like managers, they know how to handle financial situations, they're huge, they make the best decisions in today's debate, which I will continue on. So look, at the point where fans are in control, they talked about them being less resentful and buying less likely to buy tickets. And also on this point where fans do have the majority in this say, even at the point that this is true, they talked about fans being generally progressive and younger. Look, adjudicator, we just think that this is inherently not true. Yes, I had a POI. I didn't know if it was Chelsea or just a general other sports fan. But we do see old people who have been included in the sport for their whole life. They have been a part of the sport for years, since they were a kid, and they want to see this team keep its traditions. At the point where they're having, because when you get in a new team member, especially for these huge NBA, these teams like this is an investment. So at the point where a soccer team, completely slandered two young people of color in the press for missing a goal, we think that we prove that this harm is actually worse under their side of the house. So before I move on to my second point of clash, I will take a POI.
Would you say the average millionaire who owns these sports teams is richer and more conservative than a season pass holder?
Yes, I think, we've proved that these rich people are more likely to be season pass holders. So yes, we think this is symmetric. But at the point where, where a person votes for their best interest, like we talked about, they're going to vote for a rich person could vote for the conservative because there's less tax on them, etc. We still think that, in some ways, there's going to be a mix between liberal and conservative fans. But at the point where, there is, more rich people, we think they are more likely to be conservative than the average fan. Moving on to my second point of clash, what effect do corporations have on sports teams? So in terms of corporations having control, again, this still exists under our side of the house, under their side of the house and under our side of the house. So they talked about how corporations aren't going to care if, fans still have a say. Look, we gave you multiple mechanisms as to why corporations are not going to want, they're less likely to invest in these things. If they're a Russian oligarch, they can go and invest in they don't have to invest in sport, right? They're going to be, if they can't make business decisions that they know are going to profit them, They also talked about fans influencing them to make long-term better decisions. Like at the point where corporations want to be good profit, they want to get good profit out of this team, they're not going to make bad decisions for the team. If the team loses, that's not great for a corporation. How is it good for the corporation? They want the team to win. Therefore, they're going to give them good managers. They're going to give them good coaching. They're going to give them good funding. They're not going to screw them over. We think this was a big harm that they tried to push. They talked about selling off to new managers, but 3 reasons why this is not true. When we look at how highly valuable these sports teams like Chelsea are, these sports teams like in the NBA are, they're not going to want to sell this off. This is a huge investment for them. Why would they randomly sell off to another corporation? And also at the point where there's things like contracts, these exist, they can't just throw them away onto the street. We think this is a harm that falls on their side. So thirdly, just quickly, corporations versus rich people. They talked about how corporations aren't better than fans, but, they still have corporations existing. And when we look at, actually how much do these fans have to say, tickets aren't going to be accessible for these big things like the NBA, things like that. So even if they are accessible, when we have an increased amount of demand and a low supply, price is going to go up. That is the natural part of our economy. We proved our burdens today. Therefore, we win this debate. Thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you very much for that speech. Now, as is traditional in schools debating, we reverse the speaking order, so invite up the negating leader's reply.
We have proven right from first speaker that it is going to be rich, wealthy people buying these tickets, and that will have huge harms on the sports teams and the integrity of sport overall. But even if you don't buy that it is just rich people buying these tickets, we've also told you why the fans are bad actors to make decisions and why corporations are on both sides motivated to support their teams. So first of all, who is buying these tickets? So we have provided multiple mechanisms of why it's going to wealthy people. We've said they have more free time to be buying these tickets. They have more money. They're able to buy lots and lots of tickets for their extended family. And we've also given you multiple reasons why the price is likely going to be driven up. But even if the price isn't driven up, it's probably going to be wealthy people having more ability to buy these. So what happens when it's wealthy people buying these tickets? Well, we've told you that they are going to be dragging down other teams. We've told you that they're going to be vetoing hiring young players if they don't support their ethnicity, or that they don't support this young player. We've told you that they're probably old people that have a connection with the team from the past, so they don't want to get rid of coaches and managers and things like that, which we've said is really harmful for the team. And also we've given you reasons why they'd have financial incentives to drag down other teams because there's big money and betting on them, and also they could just do it because they have so much money. Why not, exercise that influence if you can? And that really harms the competition and the integrity of the sport that we play. But even if it is fans making these decisions, we tell you that fans are still bad actors to make these decisions because they're not trained sports professionals who know how to manage a team and coach a team. They're making snap decisions off oh, we lost this one game, now we now next time they bring up getting rid of a manager, we're going to get rid of them, when actually that might not be the best decision for the team. And it's also important to note here that with fans, they can't suggest decisions, they can only get rid of ones that are happening. And we tell you that at the point where this moves on to the next clash, and the influence of corporations. So corporations under both sides of the house are profit driven. So this means that corporations are not wanting to they've told you that it's Russian oligarchs that are controlling this team. Okay, firstly, we think that's not really true because there is still stuff within the management of the team and contracts that are going to prevent them from doing absolutely anything they want. We also think that at the point where you've invested in the team, a big part of the money you make from that is the fans and the support in that. So you're not wanting to do terrible things that are upsetting the fans, because you'd lose all that support. But we think at the point where these corporations and sponsors and stuff are going to have like their ability to make business decisions on their like massive, $1 million, $1 billion investments, they no longer want to invest, because now they see there's like this random group of fans. We've told you why it's harmful to be rich people, but even if it's a random group of fans, they're not going to want to invest, because they're going to think, well, this is a huge investment, so much money I'm putting in, and these fans and these teams could just like ruin it for me and I could lose all this money. And we think that they're going to not want to do that, and they're going to take their money and their investment elsewhere. So because of this, we're going to see that there are like less integrity of sport and less competition again, because these sports teams are going to really struggle to get investment because of these season passes. So in conclusion, we have brought you harms of why there'd be harms if we have like only rich, wealthy people buying up these tickets, and we've given multiple mechanisms as to why this is going to be true, and we've shown you that even if it's fans buying up these tickets, there's going to be less investment in sports teams, less sponsorship, which is bad for sport overall. Proud to stand. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech. I now invite up the final speaker of the debate, F Leader's reply.
The negating team has made the greatest harm in this debate the control of wealthy individuals over sporting teams, even though they support a world in which individuals who are able to buy teams often worth billions of dollars are those who are going to have this control. They've not proven why this is better. They've ran a straight neg and haven't provided us with why their alternative is better when it comes to this huge harm around like rich people owning it. They tell us that like rich people are going to buy up all the tickets. Well, how about that one billionaire owner who owns the entirety of clubs on your side of the house? Firstly, then, on the first point of clash as to who will own the tickets. This has by far been the biggest point of clash, because the negating team has made the entire case like contingent on this premise. We've been told that wealthier fans are going to buy up all the tickets to have more say, and that the price of like season tickets is also going to go up. We tell you there are literally like thousands of seats like in stadiums, multiple stadiums, like each for like different teams. They say like we tell you that even if like they wanted to, wealthy individuals wouldn't be able to buy up enough tickets in order to have a significant impact on like decision making. They're not going to be able to like buy up thousands of tickets and then start like affecting like and start like vetoing all the decisions, especially if the price of the tickets are going to go up, like we've been told like by the negating team. You can't tell us that like the price is going to go up so people can't afford them, but then like millionaires are going to be able to buy heaps and heaps of them. We tell you that this is an inherent contradiction in your case. Let's say like let's take them at their best and say even if hypothetically a group of wealthy individual buys up like all 25,000 tickets in a stadium, that's still better than like the single owner of the single like billionaire owner which calls the shots on their side of the house. Note that on ours, they're only like, even if they're really bad, they're only going to have the decision, like the means of like vetoing certain decisions. On their side, they've got like billionaires controlling how everything works. So we tell you that the same goes for like these really weird mechanisms which they brought up about how how these richer individuals are going to like buy up rival clubs again, and in the same way they can't buy up like every single opposition team which they might encounter throughout the course of the season. This is just outright like unrealistic, yet the negating team has chosen to hinge so much of their case on this premise about rich people like having more say on their side of the house and why this is just so bad. Okay. Secondly, then, on how corporations are going to act on either side. We've heard from Neg that corporation like want teams to do well, right? They want them to win in the same way as fans. We literally gave you like 3 mechanisms at the start of our case as to why short-term profit incentives are directly at odds with the long-term like performance of a team. We tell you that a club's owner is only going to care about how that club performs financially during the course of their ownership. They want to sell it for more than they paid for it. That is the incentive acting on them. They don't teams winning or losing, even if they're even if it's not contingent on that. They just want to maximize their return during the period of their ownership. We then showed you how when clubs like change hands at short notice, this also causes harm to like all the players who are being subject to like new management and that sort of thing. This just hasn't been grappled with at all. We've just been told that corporations want teams to win. That is not an adequate response whatsoever. We've also been told that like corporations want to like buy in due to fans buying up the tickets and like putting them off. Firstly, this again is a contradiction because you've told us that rich people are going to be the ones buying up all the tickets. So there's only a few of them, and they've got like these really bad, like big bad, like rich people incentives. Also, we showed you that we've also shown you that the corporations will want to buy in if they have like those long-term benefits, if they have those long-term benefits, which bring them like those financial incentives, which I showed you, which is created when you get like more support. They can't claim both things on their side of the house. We show you how even if at their best case, we still get better representation. That's why we're so proud to affirm.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for a great debate. I'm just going to be here for a few more seconds just to let the live stream catch up, and then I'll end it.
Hey everyone, sorry, could just each team just drop their names and speaking order in the chat so I can fill out the ballot? Thank you.